Well, it's just over a year now until Victorians head to the ballot box. And it's already being said that Matthew Guy's coalition opposition will have to pull off a political miracle if it's going to win. According to the first major news poll since 2018, the Andrews government is still on course to retain power, tipped to win a third term. The ALP's primary vote at 44%, very healthy, and the coalition's primary vote back at 36% in the weekend's poll. Meanwhile, if we take a look at the two-party preferred basis, Andrews ALP leads the coalition 58-42. Now, they're staggering results, and while we can't place too much weight on news polls, dubious polls all around the park, it does raise the question, doesn't it? Are the effects of the pandemic still being assessed by voters? They're not yet showing up in the polls, or are they? To break it all down, I'm joined by the Associate Editor at The Australian, John Ferguson, who's with me now in Melbourne. Well, John, you're an expert on Victoria. It's worth reminding people, the past 30 years or so, other than this one brief term of Liberal government, Labor's ruled Victoria. It's a very entrenched Labor state, it would seem, and not even this pandemic, record-breaking pandemic, has shifted the needle for the opposition. Help us understand why.
It's a pretty incredible poll when you think about it. We've had 6 lockdowns. The longest one went for 112 days. There've been, the Labor Party's in crisis. There's national intervention in Victoria. We've got IBAC hearings. We've got a budget that's totally trashed. Yet people are really, a clear majority of people are really locked on to Daniel Andrews. I think he's both loved and hated. I think the people who really like him love him, and that's a clear majority. And the people that hate him just really hate him. So it's, in some senses, a pretty toxic political environment down here.
It is extraordinary, though, John. I mean, you're right to point out the party itself in Victoria is in administration. We've got state debt, historical highs. He's lost 4 ministers due to this anti-corruption probe. There's a calamity of errors. Have the Liberals, though, put it back on the Liberal Party here, have they got too comfortable in opposition? Is that part of the problem?
I think, Peter, there is a clear problem with the opposition, and more than anything, how people perceive the opposition. Like the primary vote down at 36% for the coalition is just way, way too low. And I think part of what's happening is, what we're seeing is the people that amongst the 36% coalition supporters, they are very, very vocal, and they're out there and they're creating a perception that there's this big backlash against Daniel Andrews, but it's not in big enough numbers. And I think that's where I'd be really concerned if I were Matthew Guy, the state leader. I think that basically the opposition has really, really struggled. To your point about them being comfortable, I think he's probably right up to a point. I think it's more, though, they don't know how to break free, even though they've been given so many political opportunities through Labor's mistakes.
Yeah, a lot of people say to me, though, they don't really know what the opposition stands for. They know, people say they know why they don't like X or Y from the government, but they're not really sure what the opposition is offering. So, there is the question, they've only just changed leader. They've gone back to the bloke who lost in 2018. Will they cut through? That's the question. But also, if it wasn't Daniel Andrews in charge, if Labor go to the next election, let's say, with someone other than Andrews, do you think that sort of very strong result is there for them?
I think my view is that Daniel Andrews will almost certainly contest. He wants the legacy of having, as we discussed earlier today, Peter, 3 elections. I think I'm told that he's totally buoyed by these Newspoll results, and that they confirm what Labor's internal polling is showing, that basically it's going to be, we're probably looking at, in order for there a change of government, I suspect if we have a really bad COVID winter and more lockdowns, I mean, that could be really bad for Labor if that were to happen. That's a big unknown. And I suspect that's probably the only thing that's going to basically jettison Labor, although we've got another 12 months to go. And the other thing that's important to remember, look, with the Kennett government, it was only the published polls right at the very end that showed people were moving against Jeff Kennett. So I think, things can be latent. And as you say, maybe people are still processing what's been going on with the pandemic.
I think if memory serves me right too, the same was for the Baillieu opposition. They only moved the needle very much at the end and they won very narrowly there. Couldn't hold it beyond that first term. It's interesting, in recent days, Andrews has very much gone after the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's tried to play nice for the last 2 years with the premiers. In fact, last year in Victoria, a lot of Liberals were angry at the Prime Minister that he wasn't speaking up for Victorians in that long lockdown, 800 dead. We all know that the score there. But this time round, at the first opportunity, the Victorian Premier has laid into the Prime Minister, and this is particularly about the protests in recent weeks and the label of extremists. Given how effective Daniel Andrews is in Victoria, should the PM be concerned that his seat hold in Victoria might go backwards?
Oh, I think that is one of the people that I've been speaking to are saying that Scott Morrison is very soft in Victoria, and that basically, and it's a bit of a cliche that he doesn't resonate down here. But a polling analyst that I spoke to said that their take out of this is that basically this state poll is actually evidence of the coalition brand, particularly the Liberal brand, being toxic in Victoria. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's what this expert was saying to me. So potentially we are looking at Victoria being a significant issue for Scott Morrison, according to the expert that I spoke to.